I discovered my wife's wedding ring in her car one Tuesday morning after 23 years of marriage. She had never once taken it off, not even once. But there it was, lying in the cup holder, like it meant nothing. I work as a locksmith, and I can tell when something is out of place. My name is Kevin Barnes. I'm 49 years old, and I've been in the locksmith business for over 20 years. I started small, just me and an old van, responding to emergency calls at all hours. Now, I run Barnes Security Solutions, the most reliable locksmith service in 3 counties. People call me when they're locked out of their cars at 2 a.m., when they lose their house keys, or when they need a full upgrade to their security system. I've earned a solid reputation for being trustworthy, dependable, and available when people need help the most. My wife, Ashley, is 45 and works as a dental hygienist downtown. We met back in 2001 at a community barbecue and immediately clicked over bad potato salad and warm beer. She had this laugh that could light up a room, and she wasn't afraid to pitch in and help clean up afterward. That was the kind of woman she was. Or at least, that's who I thought she was. Our son, Mason, just turned 22 and graduated from college last spring with a degree in computer science. He's level-headed and works for a tech startup in Denver. When he was growing up, Ashley and I always joked that we were the perfect team. I could open any lock, and she could fix anyone's smile. That Tuesday morning began just like any other. I was in the garage organizing my tools for the day's calls when my phone buzzed, an emergency lockout at Riverside Shopping Center. Nothing unusual there, except that when I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, I noticed Ashley's car was still parked in the driveway. She'd left for work over an hour ago, or so I thought. Her purse was gone, her coffee mug was in the sink, and she'd kissed me goodbye as usual. But there was her silver Honda, parked exactly where she had left it the night before. I walked over and tried the door, unlocked. That was odd. Ashley had always been paranoid about locking her car, ever since someone broke into her friend's car at the mall. I popped my head inside, thinking she might have left something important behind. That's when I saw it. Her wedding ring, sitting in the cup holder as if it belonged there. Not on the dashboard where it might have slipped off. Not in the console where she might have put it for safekeeping. It was right there, in plain sight, like she had purposely taken it off and placed it there. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. The engraving still read, "Forever yours, Kene, 2001. I had saved up for months to buy that ring, and she had worn it every day for over 2 decades. Ashley didn't take off her jewelry, not even in the shower. She said it felt wrong without it. Standing there in our driveway, holding my wife's wedding ring while her car sat empty in front of our house, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger, not yet, but a cold, creeping realization that something was terribly wrong. I slipped the ring into my pocket and went back inside. Ashley would be home around 6, just like always, and I wanted to see how she would handle my questions. The emergency call could wait 5 minutes. This was more important. I stumbled upon my wife's wedding ring in her car that Tuesday morning, just after 23 years of marriage. She'd never once taken it off, but there it was, resting in the cup holder as if it held no significance. I'm a locksmith, and I've learned to recognize when something is out of place. My name is Kevin Barnes, 49 years old, and I've spent over 20 years working as a locksmith. I started small, with just myself and an old van, responding to emergency calls at all hours. Now, I manage Barnes Security Solutions, the most trusted locksmith service in 3 counties. People reach out to me when they're locked out of their cars at 2 a.m., when they've lost their house keys, or when they need their entire security system upgraded. I've built a reputation on being dependable, honest, and available when people need me the most. My wife Ashley is 45 and works as a dental hygienist in town. We met at a community barbecue back in 2001, bonding over terrible potato salad and warm beer. She had this laugh that could light up a room, and she was never afraid to pitch in and help clean up afterward. That's the kind of woman I thought she was, at least. Our son Mason just turned 22 and graduated from college last spring with a degree in computer science. He's got his head on straight and works for a tech startup in Denver. When he was younger, Ashley and I used to joke that we made the perfect team. I could unlock any door, and she could fix any smile. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was in the garage, organizing my tools for the day's calls when my phone rang. An emergency lockout at the Riverside Shopping Center. Nothing unusual there, Except when I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, I noticed Ashley's car was still in the driveway. She'd left for work an hour ago, or so I thought. Her purse was gone, her coffee mug sat in the sink, and she had kissed me goodbye like she always did. But there was her silver Honda, parked exactly where she had left it the night before. I walked over and tried the door, unlocked. That was odd. Ashley was always meticulous about locking her car, ever since someone had broken into her friend's vehicle at the mall. I peeked inside to see if she had forgotten anything important, and that's when I saw it. Her wedding ring sitting in the cup holder, as if it belonged there. It wasn't on the dashboard where it might have slipped off, nor in the console where she might have put it for safekeeping. It was just sitting there, in plain sight, as if she had deliberately taken it off and placed it there. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. The inscription inside still read, "Forever yours, Kene, 2001. I'd saved for months to buy that ring, and she'd worn it every single day for over 20 years. Ashley never took off her jewelry, not even when she showered. She said it felt wrong without it. Every equipment failure and mysterious overtime made my decision easier. Each lie that Ashley told became more obvious. On Friday evening, I added the final piece to my evidence file. I followed Ashley to a different location, the Marriott downtown. She met the same man I had already seen her with. They took the elevator to the 15th floor together. I photographed them through the lobby window, her hand and his as they walked toward the elevators. The timestamp on my camera read 6:47 p.m. At 7:15, Ashley texted me. "Still at the office. Dr. Reynolds is dealing with an emergency patient. Don't wait up." That night, I reviewed everything one last time. Photos, GPS logs, financial records, and a detailed timeline of Ashley's deception. I had enough evidence to bury her in court and protected everything that mattered to me. It was time for the final phase of my plan. Monday morning arrived with a crisp autumn breeze, one that normally made me grateful to be alive. But today, it felt more like an ending than a beginning. Ashley was humming in the kitchen, making her coffee, following the same routine she'd had for 23 years. "Big day ahead," Ashley announced, not looking up from her phone. "Dr. Reynolds has back-to-back root canals, and you know how those patients get." "Sounds rough," I replied, watching her fingers dance across the screen, probably texting her boyfriend about their next rendezvous. Ashley kissed my cheek, the same mechanical kiss she'd been giving me for months, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up if I'm late," she called over her shoulder. "This might be another long one." "Take your time," I said, knowing it would be the last conversation we'd ever have as husband and wife. I waited exactly 30 minutes after her car disappeared, then went to work. I had planned this moment for weeks, and every detail had been calculated. I took out the manila envelope I had prepared and placed it on Ashley's pillow. Inside were the divorce papers Sarah had drafted, signed, and notarized. On top of the papers, I placed a photograph Rick had taken of Ashley and her boyfriend kissing outside the Maria Hotel. Their faces were clearly visible, their body language unmistakable. Next to the envelope, I placed my wedding ring, 23 years of marriage reduced to a simple gold band sitting on white cotton pillowcases. Finally, I left a handwritten note on hotel stationery I'd picked up during one of my surveillance trips. When she came home, I would be gone. All I left was an envelope, a photo, and my wedding ring. "Don't look for me." I walked through our house one final time, not out of nostalgia, but to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. The family photos on the mantel would stay. They belonged to a life that no longer existed. The furniture, the decorations, the accumulated weight of 2 decades, all of it felt like artifacts from someone else's marriage. I loaded the last of my tools into my truck and drove to the apartment I'd been preparing for 3 weeks. It wasn't much, a 1-bedroom place above Martinez's electronics, but it was mine, paid for with money Ashley knew nothing about. My phone was the final step. I removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it in a dumpster behind the apartment building. No phone meant no way for Ashley to reach me, no opportunity for explanations or manipulation. At 6:30 p.m., my old life officially ended. Ashley would walk into our bedroom, see the evidence of her betrayal displayed on her pillow, and realize that her husband had vanished without giving her a chance to explain or apologize. I cracked open a beer and sat by the window of my new apartment, watching the sunset over a town where Ashley Barnes would now have to face the consequences of her choices alone. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. After everything that happened, Mason looked at me and said that I wasn't going to influence his decision, but he deserved to know the truth. I nodded slowly and said he could keep the copies of everything I had. Driving back to my apartment that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The truth was finally out, and my son understood what kind of person his mother really was. I was free to rebuild my life. 6 months after vanishing from my old life, I was finally creating something better. The divorce had been finalized without me ever having to see Ashley again. Sarah Morrison, the divorce attorney, had handled everything through the courts. Ashley's lawyer quickly realized they had no ground to stand on with the evidence I provided. I kept the house, the business, and most of our assets. Ashley got her car, her personal belongings, and half of what remained after the legal fees. She also had to explain to everyone in town why her husband of 23 years had disappeared overnight. Barn Security Solutions became my saving grace. Working with my hands, solving problems, and helping people protect what mattered to them was the reason I got into this business in the first place. Word spread quickly about my reliability, and soon I had more work than I could handle. The apartment above Martinez Electronics was never meant to be permanent, so I began looking for something bigger. I found a small house on the outskirts of town with a detached garage I could convert into a workshop. It needed work, but I had the skills to make it my own. Mason came to visit regularly. He decided to cut all contact with Ashley after seeing the evidence of her affair. One Saturday, while we were installing new security cameras around my property, Mason said, "I can't respect someone who lies that easily. If she could lie to you for months about something this big, what else has she been lying about?" It was a fair question. I had raised a son with strong principles, and Ashley's betrayal went against everything we had taught him about honesty and commitment. I started dating again, but I took things slow. Carol, who ran the bookstore downtown, had gone through her own betrayal. She understood the importance of taking time to heal, and she appreciated a man who could fix things when they broke. One evening, after I repaired the lock on her store's back door, Carol said, "You don't talk much about your ex-wife." I replied, "There's not much to say. Sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to decide if that's someone you want in your life." Carol nodded, and we both understood that starting fresh was the best option. The best part about my new life was the simplicity. No more wondering where Ashley was or what she was doing. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. No more pretending to believe the obvious lies. I worked, spent time with my son, and slowly got to know Carol better. I was building a life based on honesty and respect, not deception and betrayal. Rick told me that Ashley had moved in with Dr. Lawson after his wife divorced him. Apparently, their affair had become public knowledge when his wife hired her own private investigator. She got what she wanted, Rick said. But from what I hear, Lawson's not handling the divorce well. He's lost his house, his kids won't speak to him, and the hospital's asking questions about his conduct. I didn't feel satisfied hearing about their problems. Their relationship was built on lies and betrayal, and it was always going to collapse. What mattered was that I got out before it could destroy me too. 2 years after walking away from my marriage, I proposed to Carol at the same bookstore where we'd first really talked. She said yes without hesitation, and we planned a simple ceremony. Our wedding was small but meaningful. Mason was my best man, and Carol's daughter, Emma, was her maid of honor. We exchanged vows in the garden behind the bookstore, without any fancy venue or expensive decorations. It was just two people who had found each other after surviving betrayal and learning what a real partnership looked like. Carol said during her vows, "You taught me that a man's words should mean something, and that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every day and telling the truth." I'd never felt prouder to hear my name spoken aloud. Barn Security Solutions had grown beyond anything I had imagined. I'd hired 2 employees, expanded into commercial consulting, and developed a reputation as the guy who could solve problems other companies couldn't. The business gave me purpose, and the income gave Carol and me the freedom to build our life exactly how we wanted. We bought a house together, not the one Ashley and I had shared, but a craftsman-style place with good bones that needed work. Carol and I spent weekends refinishing floors, updating the kitchen, and installing a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. Working together on something that was ours felt like the opposite of everything my first marriage had become. After 7 years of being away from Ashley's life, Mason called me with some surprising news. "Dad, I'm getting married," he said, his voice full of excitement. Angela said yes, and we're planning the wedding for next spring. I'd met Angela a few times before. She was smart, kind, and worked as a nurse. She made Mason laugh in a way I hadn't seen in years, and it was obvious they were building something solid together. "That's wonderful news, son," I said. "Carol and I couldn't be happier for both of you. But there's something else," Mason said, his tone turning serious. "I need to ask you about the guest list. Angela thinks we should invite Mom for family unity and all that, but I wanted to check with you first." I thought about it carefully. 7 years of no contact with Ashley, 7 years of building a life she wasn't part of. But this was Mason's day, and he deserved to have both parents there if he wanted that. "It's your wedding, Mason," I replied. "Invite whoever you want. I can handle being in the same room with your mother for a few hours." The wedding was beautiful. Mason and Angela exchanged vows at a country club just outside of town, surrounded by family and friends. Carol and I sat in the second row, feeling proud of the man Mason had become. Ashley was there too, sitting several rows behind us with a man I didn't recognize. She looked older, thinner, and far less confident than the woman I'd been married to for 23 years. When our eyes met briefly during the ceremony, she nodded politely, but didn't attempt to approach. Later, during the reception, the photographer gathered family groups for formal pictures. Mason insisted on a photo with Carol and me together, both of us smiling broadly with our arms around his shoulders. "You two look happy," the photographer said while adjusting his camera settings. "How long have you been married?" 5 years, Carol replied. "But it feels like we've been together forever." That evening, Mason posted the wedding photos on his social media accounts. The picture of Carol, Mason, and me became his profile photo. 3 people who genuinely enjoyed being together, celebrating a moment of pure happiness. According to Mason, Ashley saw the photo and called him, crying. She had apparently expected the wedding to be a chance to reconnect with the family she had lost when I disappeared. Instead, she watched her ex-husband and his new wife celebrate her son's wedding while she sat with a stranger, having played no meaningful role in raising the man Mason had become. She said seeing you with Carol made her realize what she'd thrown away. Mason told me a few days later. "But, Dad, you look happier than I've ever seen you. It's like you've finally found where you belong." He was right. 7 years after walking away from a marriage built on lies, I had found something real with Carol. We had built Barn Security Solutions into a thriving business, created a home filled with laughter and trust, and become the kind of couple that made other people believe in love again. Ashley made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage. I made mine when I chose to disappear, rather than fight for something that was already broken. Looking at that wedding photo, seeing Mason's joy and Carol's genuine smile, I knew I'd made the right decision. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is walk away from what's destroying him and build something better. When she came home that night, 7 years ago, I was gone. All I had left behind was an envelope, a photo, and my wedding ring. At our son's wedding, she saw me, shocked to discover that I'd never looked back.